The morning sun cast long shadows across Diana Lawson's new backyard as she sipped her coffee on the patio. At 42 years old, with her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and laugh lines just beginning to form at the corners of her eyes, Diana still maintained the alert posture that 15 years at the FBI had instilled in her. She watched a robin splash in the bird bath, thinking about how different suburban life was from her downtown apartment. Just yesterday, Director Matthews had shaken her hand in front of the entire office, announcing her as the first woman to lead the Washington field office in its history. Special Agent Lawson has shown exceptional leadership in counterterrorism operations, he had said to thunderous applause. The memory made her smile. She had worked twice as hard as her male colleagues for years, sacrificing weekends, relationships, and even the chance to own a home. Until now. Diana stood and walked to the edge of her swimming pool, where morning light danced on the clear blue water. The house in Silver Springs had been a spontaneous decision after her promotion, a reward to herself after years of putting work first. The real estate agent had emphasized the exclusive community feel and strong neighborhood values, code words that Diana understood meant watchful neighbors and strict rules. Cardboard boxes still filled most rooms inside. Her few belongings looked lost in the spacious living room. A bookshelf of criminal psychology texts, framed photos of her academy graduation, and a small collection of plants that had somehow survived her frequent work trips. Diana had spent most of her first weekend assembling furniture and organizing her home office, where secure lines had been installed for remote work. Testing the waters, a friendly voice called. Diana turned to see an older woman waving from the neighboring yard. Just admiring it for now, Diana replied with a smile. I'm Diana Lawson. Just moved in on Friday. Martha Wilson, the woman said. Welcome to Silver Springs. I'd come over properly, but my husband Roger has me on garden duty. You'll meet everyone at the block party next weekend. We're a tight-knit bunch. Diana nodded, already noticing how Martha's eyes took inventory of the moving boxes visible through the patio doors. She would need to prepare some simple personal details to share. Nothing about her real work, of course. In 15 years of investigating domestic threats, Diana had learned that anonymity was often her best protection. The neighborhood seemed eerily quiet compared to her downtown apartment, where sirens and traffic created constant background noise. Here, she could hear birds singing and the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn. Sprinklers hissed on perfect green grass across the street. As the temperature climbed, Diana decided it was finally time. She changed into her navy blue one-piece swimsuit, practical and modest, and returned to the pool. The water felt wonderfully cool against her skin as she slipped beneath the surface. For years, she had risen at 5 a.m. to swim laps at the FBI training facility before work. Now she could float peacefully in her own backyard. Diana didn't notice the curtains moving in the window of the house behind hers, or the disapproving face watching her enjoy this simple pleasure. She was too busy planning how to arrange her new office and thinking about the major case briefings scheduled for Monday morning. After many years of hard work, Diana Lawson had earned this moment of peace. Little did she know it would be short-lived. Part 2. The Watchful Eye. Walter Simmons, a 68-year-old retired postal worker and self-appointed neighborhood guardian, had lived in Silver Springs for over 3 decades. His daily routine involved checking his security cameras, monitoring the neighborhood Facebook group, and reporting suspicious activities to local authorities. When he spotted an unfamiliar woman sunbathing by the pool at the recently sold Morrison house, Walter was immediately alarmed. No one had formally introduced themselves as the new resident, and the woman's behavior seemed inappropriate for their family-friendly community. Without attempting to introduce himself, Walter began documenting what he considered indecent exposure with his zoom lens camera. Walter Simmons woke up at exactly 6:15 a.m., just as he had every day since retiring from the Postal Service 5 years ago. His bedroom window faced east, allowing him to monitor the sunrise and check if any newspapers had been left on driveways, a sure sign of homeowners being away and a potential security risk. At 68, Walter's once tall frame had begun to stoop slightly, but his eyes remained sharp behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Coffee's ready," called his wife Marge from downstairs. Their morning routine never changed. Coffee together, followed by Walter's security rounds, while Marge worked on her crossword puzzle. "Did you see someone's moved into the old Morrison place?" Marge asked, placing his mug beside his plate of toast. Walter nodded seriously. "Noticed the moving truck Friday. No proper introduction yet. Not how things were done when we moved here." After breakfast, Walter settled into what Marge called his command center, a small room off the kitchen with 3 computer monitors. One displayed feeds from the security cameras he'd installed around their property. Another was open to the neighborhood Facebook group where he served as lead administrator. The third showed his spreadsheet tracking community concerns. For 32 years, Walter had delivered mail to every house in Silver Springs. He knew which families received too many credit card offers, who subscribed to political magazines, and which houses got letters from collection agencies. Though retired, he still considered himself guardian of community standards. "Walter, come see this," Marge called from upstairs. He found her in their spare bedroom, which had the best view of the Morrison house backyard. "Someone's using the pool," she said, handing him the binoculars they kept for birdwatching. Through the lenses, Walter saw a woman he didn't recognize swimming laps in the backyard pool. He felt his blood pressure rise. "No one introduced themselves," he muttered. "Could be anyone. Could be trespassing." "Maybe they bought the house, Walter," Marge suggested gently. "The for sale sign is gone." Walter wasn't listening. He was already heading back to his command center, where he pulled up the Silver Springs Homeowners Association handbook on his computer. He'd helped write the section on community standards and decorum himself. For the next hour, Walter scrolled through months of real estate listings, finding no record of the Morrison house being sold. He checked property tax records, which hadn't been updated yet. By mid-morning, he'd convinced himself something suspicious was happening. When the woman appeared again by the pool after lunch, Walter was ready. He positioned his birdwatching camera with the zoom lens on a tripod by the window. "Walter, what are you doing?" Marge asked, concern in her voice. "Gathering evidence," he replied. "Someone needs to make sure this neighborhood stays respectable." He clicked several photos as the woman laid out a towel by the pool. "I'm calling Roger from the HOA," Walter announced, picking up his phone. "Don't you think you should introduce yourself first?" Marge suggested. "It would be the neighborly thing." Walter frowned. In his mind, proper neighbors came to the community welcome dinner, registered with the Homeowners Association, and received the welcome packet with all the rules. This woman had done none of these things, and now she was using a pool without authorization. "If she has nothing to hide, she won't mind me asking for identification," Walter said firmly, printing out the relevant HOA pages. "Someone has to keep Silver Springs safe." He didn't notice Marge's worried expression as he added a new file to his computer. Morrison House. Suspicious activity. The third day of Diana's stay in Silver Springs brought even more sunshine and heat. After a morning video conference with her team at the FBI office, Diana decided to take advantage of her lunch break to enjoy the pool again. She changed into her navy blue swimsuit, grabbed a thick case file to review, and headed outside. Diana had just settled onto a lounge chair with her paperwork when she heard a throat clearing loudly on the other side of her fence. Looking up, she spotted an older man in pressed khaki pants and a polo shirt standing ramrod straight, clutching a clipboard. "Good afternoon," Diana said, placing her file face down to protect the sensitive information. "Can I help you?" The man adjusted his glasses and looked down at his clipboard. "I'm Walter Simmons, block captain for Silver Springs Neighborhood Watch and member of the Homeowners Association Board." He said this with such importance that Diana had to suppress a smile, thinking of the international security briefings she'd led just hours earlier. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Simmons. I'm Diana Lawson. I just moved in last weekend." Walter didn't return her smile. Instead, he flipped through several papers on his clipboard. I've been observing activity at this property for the past 3 days, and I have some concerns. Diana sat up straighter. Years of interrogation training had taught her to listen carefully before responding. According to Homeowners Association Bylaw 7.3, Walter continued, all new residents must register with the HOA within 48 hours of occupancy. And Section 12.1 clearly states appropriate community standards for outdoor attire. He held up a printed page with several paragraphs highlighted in yellow. Diana looked down at her conservative one-piece swimsuit, then back at Walter with raised eyebrows. Is there a problem with my swimwear, Mr. Simmons? The problem, Walter said, his voice rising slightly, is that no one has seen any proof that you actually belong here. The Morrison house was for sale, but there's been no official notification of a new owner. For all we know, you could be trespassing. Diana took a deep breath. She'd dealt with difficult personalities throughout her FBI career, from stubborn local sheriffs to hostile foreign operatives. This situation called for calm diplomacy. I appreciate your dedication to neighborhood security, she said evenly. I closed on this house last Thursday. My paperwork is inside if you'd like to see it. Walter's expression remained suspicious. And what about community standards? Silver Springs is a family neighborhood. Diana glanced again at her perfectly modest swimsuit. I don't believe I'm violating any reasonable standards, Mr. Simmons. I'm simply enjoying my pool on my property. Your property? Walter's voice took on a challenging tone. I've lived here for 32 years, delivered mail to every house in this neighborhood. I know everyone who belongs here. Diana stood up, keeping her voice level. Mr. Simmons, I understand you take your role seriously, but I don't actually need to prove my residency to a neighbor. If the HOA has official concerns, they can send me something in writing, and I'll be happy to respond appropriately. Walter's face reddened. This is exactly the problem with people moving in from the city. No respect for established communities or proper procedures. I suggest we both take some time to cool down, Diana replied calmly. If you'd like to discuss community standards, the HOA meeting would be the appropriate forum. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to my work. Walter stared at her, clipboard trembling slightly in his hands. This isn't over, Ms. Lawson. If you can't prove you belong here, I'll have to call the authorities. As he marched stiffly away, Diana sighed and picked up her case file again. She had faced down terrorists and organized crime leaders, but somehow neighborhood politics seemed even more challenging. Walter Simmons marched straight home, his face flushed with anger. How dare that woman dismiss him like that? After all he had done for this neighborhood over the decades. He passed Martha Wilson watering her roses and barely nodded in response to her cheerful greeting. Inside his house, Walter went directly to his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he dialed the non-emergency police number he had memorized years ago. Silver Springs Police Department, a friendly female voice answered. This is Walter Simmons from 247 Maple Avenue, he said, trying to sound official. I need to report a suspicious person who may be trespassing in our neighborhood. The dispatcher took down his information with practiced efficiency. What exactly have you observed, sir? There's a woman who's been using the pool at the Morrison house for 3 days now. Claims she bought the place, but no one in the neighborhood has been notified of a sale. And Walter hesitated, then continued, she's not following community standards for proper attire. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up quietly in front of Diana's house. 2 young officers, a tall man with a crew cut and a shorter woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, approached the front door. Diana had just changed into shorts and a t-shirt after her interrupted pool time. When the doorbell rang, she glanced through the window and immediately recognized law enforcement at her door. After 15 years with the FBI, she could spot the stance and alertness of fellow officers from a mile away. She opened the door with a composed smile. Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you? Officer James Rodriguez cleared his throat. Ma'am, we received a complaint about possible trespassing at this address. Would you mind telling us your name and how long you've been at this residence? Officer Melissa Chen stood slightly behind her partner, notepad ready but looking somewhat uncomfortable with the situation. Diana nodded. Of course. I'm Diana Lawson. I purchased this house last Thursday and moved in over the weekend. Would you like to see my identification and closing documents? That would be helpful, thank you, Officer Rodriguez said, visibly relaxing at her cooperative attitude. Diana retrieved her wallet and a folder of paperwork from the entryway table. She handed her driver's license to Officer Rodriguez, along with her mortgage documents. Then, after a moment's consideration, she also pulled out her FBI credentials. I should probably mention that I'm the new chief of the Washington field office, she said quietly. I moved here from downtown after my recent promotion. Both officers froze, their eyes widening as they stared at the FBI badge and ID. Officer Chen let out a small gasp. You're the new FBI chief, Officer Rodriguez stammered. The one they featured in last Sunday's newspaper. Diana nodded, a slight smile crossing her lips. That would be me. I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. I'm guessing my neighbor, Mr. Simmons, called you. Officer Chen found her voice. Yes, ma'am. He reported a suspicious person, and possibly inappropriate attire. Her cheeks flushed slightly with embarrassment. Diana glanced down at her t-shirt and shorts. He was referring to my swimming in my own pool earlier, in a one-piece swimsuit. The officers exchanged looks of awkward disbelief. I'm so sorry for the confusion, Chief Lawson, Officer Rodriguez said, handing back her documents. We appreciate your understanding. No apology needed, Diana replied. You're just doing your job. However, I would appreciate it if this incident could be handled with some discretion. I value my privacy, especially given my position. As the officers returned to their cruiser, Diana noticed curtains moving in windows across the street. News would spread quickly through Silver Springs, and she wondered what Walter Simmons would think when he discovered exactly who he had tried to have arrested. Part 5. The Revelation. Word spread quickly through the Silver Springs neighborhood about Walter's misguided civilian arrest attempt. While the responding officers maintained professional discretion, the police department's dispatcher was married to the HOA president, and by evening, everyone knew that Walter had tried to have the new FBI chief arrested for swimming in her own pool. Meanwhile, Diana received numerous apologetic texts and emails from neighbors, along with welcome baskets and invitations to dinner, all attempting to distance themselves from Walter's actions and establish better first impressions. By sunset, the police visit to Diana's house had become the hottest topic in Silver Springs. The story spread faster than wildfire, starting with Officer Chen's mother, who worked as a dispatcher at the police station. She mentioned it to her best friend, who happened to be married to Frank Wilson, the president of the Homeowners Association. Can you believe it? Mrs. Wilson whispered excitedly into her phone as she called Janet Reynolds from across the street. Walter Simmons called the police on the new FBI chief. She bought the Morrison place, the actual FBI chief from the newspaper. Within 2 hours, the story had reached every corner of Silver Springs through a flurry of text messages, phone calls, and hushed conversations across fences. Several residents checked their newspaper recycling bins to find the Sunday edition with Diana's photo and the article about her historic appointment as the first woman to lead the Washington field office. Diana remained unaware of the neighborhood buzz as she prepared a simple dinner and unpacked more boxes in her home office. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Deputy Director Carson. How's suburban life treating you? If only he knew. Around 7 o'clock, Diana's doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found a middle-aged couple standing there with a large basket wrapped in cellophane. Chief Lawson, I'm Frank Wilson, president of the Silver Springs Homeowners Association, and this is my wife, Patricia. We wanted to personally welcome you to the neighborhood. Diana smiled politely, though she couldn't help noticing how the man's eyes kept darting toward her, as if expecting to see a weapon. "Thank you. That's very kind," she said, accepting the basket, which appeared to contain wine, chocolates, and several gift cards to local businesses. "We also wanted to express our sincere apologies for today's misunderstanding," Frank continued, choosing his words carefully. "Walter Simmons can be a bit overzealous about neighborhood security, but he means well." Patricia Wilson nodded vigorously. "He was a postal worker here for decades before retiring. Sometimes he forgets he's not officially responsible for the community anymore." "I understand," Diana replied graciously. "In my line of work, I've met many dedicated public servants." As they chatted on her doorstep, Diana noticed more neighbors walking past her house, some waving awkwardly, others slowing down to get a better look. A young couple even took a selfie with her house in the background. After the Wilsons left, Diana had barely closed the door when the bell rang again. This time, it was an elderly woman with a plate of homemade cookies. "I'm Doris Peterson from number 215. I just wanted to welcome you properly," she said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "I've never met anyone from the FBI before." By 9 o'clock, Diana had received 4 welcome baskets, 3 plates of baked goods, and 6 invitations to dinner. Her recycling bin was filled with cellophane wrapping, and her refrigerator couldn't hold another casserole. She'd also received 15 text messages from neighbors who had somehow obtained her phone number, all emphasizing that they had nothing to do with Walter's actions. Exhausted, Diana finally turned off her porch light and settled on her couch with a glass of wine. Her phone buzzed with another text from Martha Wilson next door. "Just so you know, Walter's wife, Marge, says he's absolutely mortified. Haven't seen him this upset since they discontinued his favorite brand of coffee at the supermarket. Welcome to Silver Springs. Breakfast at my place tomorrow. I make great blueberry pancakes." Diana smiled and texted back a polite acceptance. Then she pulled up the neighborhood Facebook group on her laptop. Sure enough, there was already heated discussion about replacing Walter as head of the neighborhood watch program. Walter Simmons had not left his house in 3 days. He sat in his recliner, blinds drawn, ignoring the doorbell whenever it rang. The neighborhood watch group had already voted unanimously to replace him with Ted Johnson, a retired high school principal who lived on Elm Street. The Silver Springs Facebook group, which Walter had once ruled like a small kingdom, was now filled with comments about new leadership and moving forward as a community. "You need to eat something, Walter," Marge said, placing a sandwich beside him. "And maybe consider answering the phone. Frank Wilson has called 4 times about the HOA meeting tonight." Walter shook his head miserably. 32 years, Marge. 32 years of serving this community, and now they treat me like I'm some kind of joke." "You did call the police on the FBI chief," Marge reminded him gently. "People are bound to talk." "How was I supposed to know who she was?" Walter protested. "Nobody told me." The doorbell rang again. Walter sank deeper into his chair, but Marge gave him a stern look. "That'll be Chief Lawson," she said firmly. "And you are going to speak with her." Walter's face paled. "She's pressing charges." "No, but she agreed to meet with you at the community center instead of filing a harassment complaint. I told her you'd be there at 4 o'clock. At 3:55 p.m., Walter entered the Silver Springs Community Center looking like a man headed to his own trial. He'd worn his best sweater and combed his thinning hair carefully. Inside the small meeting room, Diana Lawson sat at a table reviewing some papers. "Mr. Simmons," Diana said, rising to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming." Walter awkwardly shook her hand, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Chief Lawson, I should apologize for the misunderstanding." Diana gestured for him to sit. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. Before we discuss what happened, I'd like to understand your perspective on this neighborhood." For the next 20 minutes, Walter spoke about Silver Springs, how he'd watched it grow from a new development to a thriving community, how he'd delivered mail to growing families, and how he'd started the Neighborhood Watch program after a series of break-ins in the 1990s. "I just wanted to keep things safe," he concluded. "The way they've always been." Diana nodded. "I understand that. In my work, I've seen how important community vigilance can be. But there's a difference between vigilance and assumptions, Mr. Simmons." Walter finally met her eyes. "I assumed you didn't belong here. Because I didn't follow what you considered the proper channels." "Yes. And because you're—" Walter hesitated. "Different from most people who've lived here before," Diana suggested. Walter nodded, embarrassed. "I'm not. I don't mean to. It's just change happens so fast now." "Change can be difficult," Diana agreed. "But not all change is bad. I moved here because I wanted the same things you value. A safe, quiet community where people look out for each other." By the time they finished talking, Walter had agreed to write a formal apology to Diana and to take a step back from his self-appointed security role. In return, Diana promised to attend the next neighborhood gathering and considered joining the Community Safety Committee, where her professional expertise might be helpful. As they walked out together, several neighbors who had coincidentally gathered near the community center pretended not to be watching them. "They'll be talking about this for weeks," Walter muttered. Diana smiled. "Let's give them something worth talking about then. Would you mind walking me home, Mr. Simma?" 6 months had passed since Diana Lawson moved to Silver Springs. The maple trees that lined the neighborhood streets had changed from summer green to brilliant red and gold, and now stood bare against the winter sky. Inside Diana's home, once empty and filled with boxes, comfortable furniture, and personal touches, had transformed the space into a true home. On this chilly Saturday morning, Diana was reviewing security plans for an upcoming diplomatic visit when her doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Walter Simmons, bundled in a winter coat and holding a folder. "Good morning, Chief Lawson," he said with a polite nod. "I have those historical photos of Silver Springs I mentioned. Thought you might like to see how the neighborhood has changed since the 80s. "Come in, Walter. And please, it's just Diana on weekends," she reminded him, gesturing toward her kitchen. "Coffee's fresh." Over the past months, an unexpected friendship had formed between them. Walter had channeled his organizational skills into helping Diana apply for a community improvement grant, while she had quietly provided security insights for the neighborhood's new safety plan. As they sat at her kitchen table looking through old photographs, Diana smiled at one showing a much younger Walter standing proudly by the original neighborhood entrance sign. "The community center was just being built then," Walter explained. "Now they're finally renovating it, thanks to that grant money." Diana nodded. "The new playground equipment should be installed by spring." From her back window, they could see children building snowmen in adjacent yards, parents chatting across fences. The scene was peaceful, exactly why Diana had chosen this neighborhood. "There's the block party next weekend," Walter said, carefully placing the photos back in his folder. "The committee is hoping you'll judge the chili contest." Diana laughed. "As long as nobody expects me to reveal state secrets about my own recipe." Walter hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been on his mind. "Does it ever bother you? The way everyone still talks about how we met?" Diana considered this. The incident had become neighborhood legend, with details growing more exaggerated each time the story was retold. At the last HOA meeting, someone had joked about Walter calling in a SWAT team over a swimsuit violation. "People need their stories," she said finally. "And honestly, it broke the ice much faster than if I just moved in quietly. Nobody's intimidated by my job anymore." Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Martha Wilson told me yesterday that she forgets your FBI until she sees the security detail drop you off sometimes." The conversation was interrupted by Diana's phone buzzing with a work message. Walter stood to leave, understanding her weekend calls were often important. "Before I go," he said, reaching into his pocket, "the neighborhood watch. Well, the Community Outreach Committee now made these." He handed her a small card with contact information for all nearby residents, organized by street and house number. "We give them to all new residents now," Walter explained. So everyone feels welcome right away. Diana accepted it with a smile, recognizing the significance of this simple gesture. The man who had once called the police on her was now making sure no newcomer would ever feel like an outsider. As Walter walked home through the snowy streets of Silver Springs, he waved to neighbors shoveling driveways and children building snow forts. He no longer felt the need to monitor everyone's activities or report suspicious behavior. Instead, he noticed Mrs. Chen teaching her granddaughter to make snow angels, the new family on Birch Street struggling with Christmas lights, and 3 teenagers helping an elderly man clear his walkway. The neighborhood hadn't really changed that much, Walter realized, but somehow his way of seeing it had.